So good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here. This is our final lesson on samskara that we've been talking about this week. So samskaras, just to review, are the inherited patterns that we have in life. These are mental patterns that we get into, and these are also sometimes physical patterns. I think the best example of this on a physical level, if you've ever seen video footage of people working on a factory assembly line, there's some really good film footage of this in some of the Ron Frick movies. I don't know if you've ever seen any of his stuff, but these people, and they've got them all in fast motion, are like picking up a piece and screwing it into here, and then picking up another piece, putting here, and then putting it on the line. And then they just do this same thing like over and over again. And it's this pattern, and they get to be so quick at it that you can tell sometimes when they have extended footage of these people doing these repetitive things, you can kind of see their mind kind of going somewhere else, where they're kind of slipping out of the moment because they don't have to think very hard about what they're doing. They've done it so many times and so often that it's just sort of ingrained, like it's just muscle memory purely. There's no real interaction with what they're doing. And in some ways, this is very much like our lives. We have maybe a certain routine if we get up at the same time every day, or we go to bed around the same time, and we sort of have this routine that has become so common for us that it's like working on that assembly line. There's steps that we do in a particular order. And what happens is when we're not fully present, when we're not fully engaged in the action that we're doing because it's so automatic for us, we slip back into this pattern of doing things exactly the same way. And so I guess my challenge for you, maybe over the weekend before we start our new lesson next week, would be to see what regular activities you can do in a slightly different way. Maybe, like I've mentioned, like brushing your teeth with your non-dominant hand, or maybe doing things in a slightly different order. I normally make my coffee in a French press every morning, and this week, just to kind of get into this mode of switching it up, I've been making coffee in different ways. I'm still making my coffee, but because I'm not doing it in the way that I always do, I have to be a little bit more present to it. I have to think about it a little bit more and stay a little bit more engaged in the moment. So that's kind of what we're going to try to do today. We'll think about some of these routines that we do. Not that all routines are bad. I personally need to live on a routine. I'm very much more balanced when I have kind of a routine. But what we want to ask ourselves when we consider these routines is this a groove that I'm kind of flowing with the way things go and it's taking me closer and closer to my goal? Or is this a rut where I'm doing things the same way in order to either avoid thinking about it, or because I have become so ingrained in this routine that I'm disengaged? So this might be some things to consider as we move through the rest of the weekend. What standard routines are a groove, and what standard routines are maybe a rut? So, and the way we can determine that is it taking me toward my goal, and am I engaged? Am I having an experience of fullness of each moment as I move through these tasks? Or am I just kind of absent-mindedly doing these things and maybe my mind or my heart is somewhere else besides this moment? So what we're going to try to do is just kind of shake up some of these routines a little bit. We're going to start things as we normally do in our seated pose. So if you want to come into a firm and established seat, we can let that be a representation of being firmly established in the moment. So let's find that establishment. Let's settle into that firm, aware, and alert way of being. And so we sit all the time. We sometimes work sitting, we relax sitting down, and so we don't have to think about it. Normally we're fully supported, but let's try to be as engaged as we can be, allowing that settling in feeling to happen in the low body, but being still engaged and aware and alert and awake through the upper body. So we might bring a little bit of action and intention. Maybe we're kind of gently lifting the ribs by drawing the navel in, kind of empowering the core of who we are. And this core of who we are is called the Sakshi. It is the witnessing consciousness. So in order for us to stay present in the moment, in order for us to have a full experience of each moment, we have to stay alert, engaged, and actively participate in each moment. And once we're in this established place, once we're active and alert, let's just simply use that sakshi awareness, that observation or witnessing consciousness to watch the breath as it moves through that stillness of the body. And with each breath that comes in is in some ways a metaphor for the moment passing through us. It comes into the breath comes into our body and then flows back out. In the same way, the moment and everything the moment has to offer flows into our consciousness and then passes on through. And just like each breath, inhale and exhale, is followed by the next inhale and exhale, and so on and so on. As long as we're alive, we're in that flow of breath flowing, passing through us. Just like that, each moment is followed by the next. And so as we continue to breathe, as we continue to stay alert, we start to notice the little nuance from one moment to the next by staying fully engaged. So we'll do something that we do often. We'll bring the hands down to the floor on either side of the mat. And as we inhale, we'll sweep the hands out wide in a big circle, maybe the palms or fingertips touch. And as we exhale, bring them back down to the floor. So this is something we do so often that we really don't need to think about it too much. It feels very natural. Our mind or our attention might even wander as we are engaged in this. So what we're gonna do, just like so many of our other routines, part of your challenge for the weekend is to kind of break up your routine just enough that you have to stay alert. So what we'll do is the next time you inhale and your palms come together above your head, just pause in your movement but let your breath flow a few times. So this pause is that noticing of being fully aware. And then we're gonna reverse our direction, which is really confusing for me. I don't know about you guys, maybe this is easy for you. But as you inhale next, bring your hands back down to the floor. And then as you exhale, sweep your hands back up. Now, usually 2 or 3 passes through this and I'm already reversed back to the other way of doing things, especially if I'm teaching and I'm talking. I get kind of mixed up and I fall right back into my default setting. So inhaling as the fingers come down, exhaling as they come back together above the head. Now just notice that you have to stay a little bit more alert. It's just as easy as the first way, but because we normally do it the other way, we can autopilot, and if we don't pay attention and stay alert and fully present to this action, we automatically kind of slip back into that old way of doing things. Once again, let's break up this pattern. So next time your hands come together above your head, pause, maybe reach a little bit. And then let's open the hands a little bit wider so we have like a big round shape in the arms. We might kind of imagine the shape of our arms as like a satellite dish. And what we'll do from here is just kind of open this satellite in all directions. So we can lean from side to side and front and back. We might make some big sweeping circular motions. Feel how this is engaging your core. So again, we're engaging that essence of who we are, which is that witnessing consciousness. Just kind of open yourself up to everything in all directions, kind of opening up to what each moment has to offer, staying fully present and fully aware as you move. Now, because our arms are really active here, you might start to feel some heat in the shoulders as well as through the core. So maybe take about 3 more cycles of breath, finding yourself opening to all things, imagining that little satellite dish in your arms. And then relax your hands down, come back into stillness. And notice now, even as we're in that stillness state, we are starting to feel or sense maybe the shoulders or the core warming up. We're starting to feel that engagement or the effects of that engagement. So we've opened up to everything all around us. Let's also now begin to open up to what's happening within us. So let's extend the legs long in front of us. And you may or may not want some kind of support. We are going to find a forward fold, but before we do that, let's come into a really engaged staff pose. So the hands can press into the floor on either side of your hips, or maybe they press into the thighs to activate the arms. We've lifted and lengthened and become alert in the torso. We've reached the crown of the head upward. We might even activate and spread the toes or pull them back towards the torso, activating the legs. The whole body here is really active. Maybe let's make the face active by smiling. If you're not feeling that vibe, you can also stick your tongue way out and kind of get a couple of lion's breaths in. So kind of clearing out the way we always do things to find a fresh perspective. Then from this active and alert place, let's draw the chin down towards the chest, turning the gaze inward toward the heart. And then with this whole body active, start to reach your heart towards your knees or towards your toes, continuing to activate and lengthen. Arms might come to either side of your feet or more on your shins. But continuing to look inward, still alert, still active. Let's practice this inward gaze for a few more breaths, and then we'll just kind of soften into it, allowing alertness to be our new normal. So from here, once we've kind of established this alert gaze inward, we'll start to draw the shoulders down towards the feet or the knees as well, opening and lifting the back body as we fold a little deeper. We might even soften and shake out the feet and legs a little bit. Keep the gaze inwardly turned, even if the eyes are closed. Pay attention to sensations that are happening within you. And notice even as you are focusing inward, maybe that's that one thing, we're kind of focusing one direction inside, we can still hear ambient sounds. We can still feel the temperature of the space around us. We can still feel the firmness of the floor and the openness of the space around us. Even though our gaze is inward, we still sense everything. We're broadening our scope and bringing alertness to everything that's available to sense. Couple more breaths here, getting a little softer into that inward gaze with each exhale. Then start to rise back up again into that alert staff pose, engaging through the legs, the feet, the torso, maybe smiling through the face or taking a few more of those lion's breaths. And then soften the muscles a little bit, bring the hands behind the body. And bending at the knees, planting the soles of the feet on the floor. Let's find what we would normally find as our tabletop is usually our next shape, but let's find a reverse table here. So with the feet in front and the arms behind, let's lift the sacrum off the floor. We might be able to come flat in the torso. We might be a little lower down in the hips, but just kind of engage to the best of your ability. Hold for a few breaths. And then let your sacrum come back down, maybe rising back up and down a few more times. We'll take about 10 or 12 breaths. You can choose to hold for that whole time or take a few breaks. If you're lifted, see if you can take a few kinds of cat and cow motions, whether your hips are high or low. Kind of let your sacrum, your tailbone point upward towards the ceiling and then downward towards the floor. Notice how much attention and effort is required for this basic movement. And then next time you come down to your hips on the floor, let's swing into our more typical tabletop pose with the knees behind us, feet behind, and arms in front of us this time. Now let's find our cat-cow. And again, just notice how much easier this is. So we're inhaling as the belly drops and the front body gets broad. Exhaling as we pull chin into the chest and lift the back of the heart. Not much thought required here because we do this really often. Next time you exhale and the chin is in towards the chest, pause in your movement. Let a few breaths flow through you. We're taking a pause here to recognize our level of alertness. And then again, we'll try to reverse that direction. So inhale into your back body. Exhale as your belly drops and your chin lifts away from your heart. Like I said, I can get about 2 or 3 rounds of this reverse cat-cow in before I start to lose the pattern and revert to my normal way of doing things. So see how alert you can stay. we'll come back into our neutral table. So see if you can kind of flatten out your spine like a dinner table, almost as if you could support a bowl of soup or a glass of something. Just kind of finding that steadiness. And then we'll reach the right foot back on the mat behind us. Toes are on the mat underneath the foot, and press into the hands. Stretch out that right leg a little bit. Maybe the left knee pulls up in towards the ribs as you exhale. That's optional. Depends on how much effort you want to make this morning or how hot or cold your body might be right now. Then making sure the left knee is on the floor. Now drop your right heel in towards the center of the mat. Let your heart shift to the right side and roll the right arm up. So we could probably hold this pose for a little while depending on the strength of our left arm. And then choose if you want to find stillness here and just stay alert, or if you want to find some kind of movement, maybe lifting and lowering that right leg, maybe bending and straightening the right knee or the right arm. Just see if you can find some novel movement. Maybe we're just kind of swinging forward and back, or cat and cow in this shape. Just find a little novel movement to keep you aware and alert. One more inhale, and as you exhale, bring your right foot and your right hand back down to the mat, kind of swinging back to a forward-facing movement here. Tucking those right toes underneath the body. We're going to press into the hands, lifting the left knee and the hips to come into three-limb downward-facing dog. Left leg rises. Perhaps we can take a moment here and bend into the right knee and maybe touch it down or come close to the floor. Notice again how much effort and alertness of your balance you have to maintain. And then bring your left foot back down to the mat. We're in downward facing dog here. Find a little bit of movement to make this familiar pose novel, keeping your alertness. Maybe lift and lower the chin away from the chest. Maybe micro cat-cow in this shape. Then with steadiness and both feet on the floor, let's start to raise and lower the knees from and towards the mat. So as we bend at the knees, maybe they touch all the way down, maybe they just bend a little bit, but you can come all the way down if you like. And just rise and fall. Maybe this is with your breath. Next time your knees come towards the floor, go ahead and drop back into that tabletop shape, neutralizing the spine. And then let's start to swing the left foot out to the side. So it's kind of reaching out to the left side of your mat. You know, you can't see what I'm doing. It's basically this kind of motion. So your left leg is out wide. And then balancing on the right knee and the right hand, let's roll our heart open to the left. And again, maybe we find a little bit of movement here to stay alert and to experiment with the pose. When we are in motion, or when we are kind of finding novelty in an unusual shape, we don't do this pose super often. Maybe finding that that alertness is tied to our ability to stay in motion, and our curiosity and the novelty of this pose is keeping us in that alert state of being. Then let's walk our left foot up towards the front of the mat, just outside of that left hand. So we're kind of finding a dragon pose. And again, find a little bit of motion here, maybe forward and back, kind of straightening and bending into that left knee. Maybe shifting hips side to side, or sort of twisting a little bit, letting the left knee fall open a few times. Then having experienced some of that novelty, let's come into a pause in our dragon pose. So perhaps we stay lifted on the hands, perhaps we come down to forearms or a support of some kind. Lift the heart open and let the pelvis drop down. And now we're finding an intentional stillness. Eyes might close, they might stay open. You can turn the head from side to side, kind of staying alert to what's around. We might drop the chin into the chest, even though the heart is lifted here. So the only thing that's really moving here is our attention, or our gaze, as we take this familiar pose and kind of take in as much awareness as we can. Take a few more breaths in your stillness. Maybe again, just the head or gaze is moving. We're going to try to challenge ourselves, just do the best you can. We're going to try to move from this dragon pose back into that three-limbed shape. So we're going to try to tuck the right toes under the body and slowly just kind of lift yourself up to lift that left leg high. Maybe we take a few more of those dips. Maybe we just stay steady here. Then coming back into all four limbs on the floor in downward facing dog. Press into the hands and feet, be a little bit more active and lift the sacrum a little bit higher. And then on your next exhale, let's drop back to the knees on the floor and find neutral table. So even though this is less effort than our down dog or our three-limb down dog, bring a little bit of effort into that core of our being, the abdominal muscles, so we can engage that awareness or that sakshi. Then left toes will reach back onto the mat, kind of press into the palms to stretch out the back of the left leg. Maybe on your exhales, your right knee rises in toward your ribs. That's optional. Then with your next exhale, with your right knee and right hand on the floor, drop your left heel towards the center of the mat. Shift your heart to the left and raise up through that left hand. And again, maybe we find stillness here. Maybe we find some novel motion, bending and straightening the left limbs. Maybe we stay on the floor and find a little cat-cow, or just kind of swing that left arm around, warming up the shoulder. Kind of imagine maybe that the arms are back in that satellite shape and we're kind of opening up, kind of sending our antenna of attention around. 2 or 3 more breaths, experimenting. And then bringing left knee and left hand back to the floor. Let's extend the right leg out wide to the side. Foot is on the floor. Maybe just big toe and heel, maybe the sole of the foot. And again, we'll start to roll the heart open now to the right. Right arm might rise. And again, just find a little motion, maybe forward and back. Maybe that right arm is making some arcs or kind of taking in that antenna of information, staying alert to everything happening in this moment, both within the body and outside the body. Then we'll start to bring the right foot up towards the front of the mat, just outside of that right hand, coming into that tabletop shape. We did skip our little three-limb down dog practice here. We'll see if we can get back to that. We'll just add it at the end, maybe go a little longer. So finding some motion in your tabletop or your dragon shape, shifting the hips, twisting the shoulders, maybe cat-cow. Just finding some novel motion here to keep you alert and aware and present in this shape. And then find your pause. So we've raised and heightened our awareness. Now we're going to come into stillness and see if we can maintain that awareness. So let your hips drop low, let your heart open. Maybe we lower down to a support or to elbows here. Maybe the only thing that's moving here is our gaze and our attention. Maybe inward, maybe upward, side to side. About 3 more breaths. Stillness or motion, but finding that complete awareness of everything that's going on, both within and all around you. And then since we skipped the first session of our 3-limb down dog, we'll just try to go a little bit longer in this second session. So eventually, we'll start to tuck the left toes under the body and see if we can carefully challenge ourselves to slide straight into that 3-limbed downward facing dog.
And let's take a few of those knee dips if we were practicing those before. Seeing if you can just lower that left knee toward or to the ground as the right leg stays lifted. Maybe take about 7 breaths, dropping only as often as keeps you alert. Notice the effort to maintain your attention and awareness. And eventually bringing both feet to the floor. Let's take that effortful press into the feet and hands to lift the sacrum a little higher. And rather than coming straight to dropping the knees, let's come into a plank position. You can drop the knees here if you like, but see if you can, whether your knees are lifted or down on the floor, see if you can stay really engaged through the core center. Keeping that alertness, the essence of our being, the core of our being, that witness, the part of us that is unchanged by the changing world. If your knees are not already on the floor in plank position, go ahead and drop your knees down and start to lower your body all the way to the belly. Chin might rest on the floor, possibly one cheek. See if you can let yourself fully relax into the floor. Maybe shake out any tension in the body. Slow your breath. And let's slide the right arm out to the right on the floor. So palm is down against the mat. Left hand is underneath the left shoulder. And let's just press into that left hand and start to shift your heart open to the left side of the mat. Maybe right cheek can come down to the mat here. And we're just kind of rolling back onto that right arm. Your left knee might bend, sole of the foot might come before or behind the body. We're just twisting open in this shape. See if you can stay aware of where there's sensation in the body. And just what we see from this unusual perspective with our head so close to the floor. On an exhale, let's return the belly flat to the mat. Shifting your left cheek to the floor, extending the left arm out wide from the shoulder. Right hand's gonna come underneath the right shoulder. Take a moment to settle in first. Then press into the right hand to shift your heart open to the right. Maybe the right foot comes to the floor in front of your body or maybe behind. And again, just see if you can stay, even though we're in stillness, see if you can stay alert here. Fully present to the moment. Breaking up our patterns of the way we normally do things. Normally when we come to the belly, we start to lift the heart away from the floor to face front. And this time we've kind of taken an approach where we go from side to side. One more inhale here before we come back to the belly lying flat on the mat. Let's bring each hand under each shoulder. Chin can rest on the mat here. And then let's come back to the way we normally do things. So relaxing the lower body. Engage that sakshi, that core of our being in your abdominals. And as you engage there, start to lift the heart away from the floor and let it point forward. Chin might lift. We might also press into the hands to get a little higher lift. Depends on the body. You could also come to forearms, more like a Sphinx pose. Take a few breaths in this active, open, lifted space. One more big inhale into your open heart. Exhale, bring your hands back under your shoulders, one cheek or your chin on the mat. Start to tuck your toes under the body. Let's see if we can find our way from here with knees on or off the mat into that plank or push-up shape again. I'm not great at push-ups, but I think I can do it if I stay alert and focused. And then from here, if your knees are not lifted, go ahead and lift your knees and come into downward facing dog. Pressing into the hands, pressing into the feet, lifting the sacrum high. On an exhale, bring both knees back down to the floor. We're back in tabletop. Flat back, engaging through the core. Alert and aware. Then lift up the back of your heart, big cat arch, tuck your chin deeply in towards your chest. And either from here, just walk the hands forward, or maybe walk the hands forward and drop the hips down toward the heels. So we're coming into either child's pose or sort of that puppy pose. And maybe for the first few breaths in this shape, we're actively stretching the arms forward or actively kind of lengthening or actively lifting the back of the heart. And then once you've been active and alert there, see if you can soften your effort and still stay alert. The body is softer. The effort is more relaxed, but our awareness, because we intentionally engaged with it, our awareness is still kind of alive and moving. Take in what's happening within the body, what sensations, and take in what's happening in your environment. Try to be fully present to the moment. Then from here, we'll rise back up into our cat arched tabletop. So chin is still in towards the chest, back of the heart is still lifted. And we're just gonna come to lifting, if we can, the back of the heart up to standing on the knees. So aligning the spine, I'm gonna use a little padding underneath my knees here. We're just coming to standing on the knees, perhaps the toes are tucked under the body, perhaps the tops of the feet are flat on the floor. But in this knee standing shape, let's lift our arms back up again, opening wide into that satellite shape. Maybe we take a little bit wider stance in the knees to balance ourselves as we open our little satellite dish in all directions again. So again, this could be side to side, front back. It could be more of a circular motion. Taking everything in, noticing how just by the very nature of turning this satellite dish open to collect more information, our core center, that Sakshi witnessing consciousness, is more engaged. Take it 2 or 3 more breaths, kind of taking in as much as we can with our wide satellite dish arms. And come back to an aligned and upright place. Relax your hands down, and then maybe just kind of shake out the body. Kind of breaking up stillness, kind of bringing an alertness and awareness to the body, then pause. We're gonna come back into an open heart, lifted chin pose. So we can do this with a couple of different ways. We could do this by lifting the hands and leaning back. We could do this with hands on hips or fists pressed into the low back for support. We might also come down to reaching toward the heels, or even come to the hips resting on the heels, hands behind and lifting. So there's lots of variations we could take on this camel pose. Maybe even trying a couple of different arm options as we hold for another 2 or 3 breaths. When you're ready to release, come back into that neutral, standing on the knees. Maybe tuck the chin in towards the chest. Shoulders might drop forward. Just kind of let your arms hang in front of your body and kind of shake out or loosen up any tension. And then coming back to standing on the knees, we're gonna lean into that left knee and free up the right foot to step towards the front of the mat. So we kind of have a not so low lunge with our back knee leaned into the floor. Maybe we can kind of sink and rise through the hips a few times, just kind of feeling out where we have the most steadiness. Once you have a steady lunge, keep lifting your heart open, and maybe the chin rises a little bit, and then open both your arms out wide to twist your heart open to the right. From here, we might find stillness or movement in the arms. Maybe we have that little satellite kind of opening up or sending out our fingertip antennas to take in as much information as we can. Notice what's in your field of vision with your heart turned this way.
Come back to facing center. This is awkward. We're gonna turn to the other side without moving our feet. So now we're opening to the left. Notice how this shifts the sensation in the body, and of course also shifts our perspective. Maybe we find motion or stillness here. Good. When you are ready, bring both hands to frame that right set of toes. Kind of shift forward and back again. And then bring your right knee back behind the body. So we're basically in table. Arch up through the spine, chin to chest, engaging the core, looking within. See if you can keep that awareness, that sakshi, the essence of our being, the core muscles in your abdominals. Keep those engaged as you lift the back of your heart to come back to standing on the knees. From here, chin to chest, again, shoulders forward, just kind of shake out the arms, kind of find a softness in the body, then come back to that alertness place. We'll shift our weight into the right knee, kind of leaning over and bringing the left foot in front, rising and falling. Finding a place, maybe shifting the position of the left foot a few times to find a very steady low lunge here. Once you've got it, open your arms out to shoulder height and twist your heart open to first the left. Maybe there's motion in the arms as we open our attention to this new perspective. Take a few more breaths. Then twisting back to center and all the way to opening to the right. Again, notice what shifts happen in sensation. Maybe we have to shift where our balance is to make this a little bit more tolerable. Maybe we find a little motion, opening up our perspective. Two more breaths. Now that second exhale, we'll bring the hands back down to framing the left toes. Take a few more little active motions here before returning back to left knee behind the body in table. Neutralize, engage the core, the essence of our being, that witnessing consciousness. Then drop the belly down, spread that abdominal area wider by letting the belly drop. Lift through the chin to open the throat center. Feel the tailbone pointing more upward. Take a few cycles of breath. Start to notice things in this pose that we don't normally notice, maybe whether or not your fingers are pressed into the mat, whether or not your toes are tucked. It's not that these things need to be adjusted so much as just pay attention to them. Then let's reverse back into that cat shape. So start first with the chin coming into the chest, then lift the back of the heart and the bottom of the ribs, point the tailbone down towards the floor. See how high you can lift the back of your heart. Then again, from here, we can start to walk the hands forward to find that melting heart or puppy pose, or we could drop the hips back towards the heels and find a child's pose. So some kind of variation of that inward gazing toward the floor position. And again, just like we did in our forward fold at the beginning of class, even though our attention is focused primarily inward, notice what you can still perceive outside of the body, even with our focus intently inward. Yoga philosophy tells us that everything is one thing, that there isn't any separations. The separations between things that are both the illusion, and the Yoga Sutras also tell us that this is the cause of suffering, is this perceived separation. And what I'd like for us to notice is that we're looking inward, but we're perceiving so much more than what's inside of us. That this illusion of the body making us separate, or our individual mind making us separate, is the cause of suffering. And of course, in these divisive times, we feel, so many things are not me, that's not me, I'm not that. And this is creating a lot of suffering within us. So we have to try to look inward enough to find that awareness, to find that neutral witnessing observation consciousness. Take 2 more breaths in your inward facing pose, whatever you've chosen. Then rise back into your neutral tabletop. We'll shift the knees to one side to come back to a seated position. Knees can swing around in front of the body, soles of the feet on the floor. And let's roll on down to the back. So once the back of your head, the back of your shoulders, and your sacrum are all on the earth, bring enough awareness to your body to shift around so that you feel aligned from root to crown, and also take a few breaths. Maybe the knees fall together to support one another. Arms can be on the body or out wide, but take a few breaths to let yourself become fully passive. We've done a lot of engaging through the core, that Sakshi witnessing consciousness. Perhaps we've done enough practice with that as we settle into stillness, as we become more passive in the body, we can still maintain that level of awareness without so much effort. So we're going to take 3 more postures before we find our stillness for resting pose. So we'll bring the arms down alongside the body, wrists near to your hips. Maybe gently tuck the shoulder blades a little under the body to bring a slight lift to the heart. Separate the knees from one another so that the hips and heels and knees are all about the same distance apart. Take a full breath into the low belly, and as you exhale, press into the feet, find a bridge pose. Maybe it's low, maybe it's high. And in this bridge pose, we're gonna break it up a little bit by just gently pointing the tailbone down, then pointing the tailbone up. So we're just cat-cowing kind of just through the hip area. Notice how much effort is required. See if you can still maintain enough alertness that you notice whether your face or hands or toes are soft, whether your breath is soft. And then as you exhale next, bring your body back down flat to the floor. See if you can find a few breaths moving through the body, the moment passing through you to find that passivity, relaxing the body downward. We're gonna move back into a bridge pose. This time we're either gonna hold through effort, or perhaps we could use the palms to support the sacrum. If you have a block or a bolster or a folded blanket nearby, you could also use that to take a supported bridge pose. So as you are ready, take a big breath into the low belly. Exhale, press into the feet again. Perhaps the shoulder blades walk a little deeper under the body. Maybe we can bring the hands underneath the sacrum. If so, perhaps we can lift the feet off the floor a little bit, come into like a little half shoulder stand or a half plow pose. If you're on a block or some other kind of support, you might also experiment with this. If not, feet can stay planted. And just notice how close the heart is to the chin. So even though we're open and outward facing with our heart center, our gaze is still inward facing. Again, kind of reiterating that idea that everything is one. If we focus inward or if we focus outward, we're still focusing on the same thing. We're alert and aware, not just falling into autopilot. So wherever you are, whatever variation of this pose you've taken, maybe take 2 more breaths. And then just slowly, wherever you are, bring yourself back down to shoulders, back of the head, and sacrum on the mat. Moving your arms and feet and knees into whatever position helps you to be fully relaxed. The arms are going to come out wide in some fashion, so we might take the little cactus arms, we might kind of recreate that little satellite shape, a big wide arc in the arms and hands. We might be flat on the floor, straight out in a T shape, so just kind of finding some kind of wide shape for the arms. engaging that central core of our being, the abdominal muscles, and also that sakshi, that witnessing consciousness. Let the feet float off the floor, let the knees fall just kind of passively in towards the chest. Maybe find a little side to side or circular motion in the knees. And then we're just gonna take a brief supine twist to either side. If you have a favorite way of doing this twist, don't pick that one. Maybe the legs are straight this time, or maybe one leg is straight. Just kind of find a slightly different way of finding the supine twist. Maybe the legs cross first. Maybe one foot is on the floor and the other knee is on the floor. Just kind of experiment with finding a supine twist that you can take for about 4 to 5 breaths. See if you can come back into that passive place, which of course requires an awareness. So ideally the body becomes passive, but the mind or that witnessing consciousness stays alert. Head might even turn from side to side. And when those 4 or 5 breaths or 4 or 5 moments have passed through you, bring yourself back to that centered place. Knees just falling softly in towards the chest, maybe side to side or circular motion. Then if it's not too crazy on your balancing, we might even take a slightly different variation as we fall to the other side with our pose. So maybe the legs are crossed, maybe the legs are straight as we find our twist to the other side. And just see how passive you can become. We first had to become alert by choosing a slightly different variation to this pose than we would normally choose. And then once we've become alert, let's see if we can become fully passive in the body, but maintaining that alertness and awareness in the witnessing consciousness, in the sakshi. This awareness is the key to overcoming that autopilot of samskaric living. That when we are not engaged with the witnessing consciousness, it's so easy to fall into the funnel of doing the way we always do. So kind of creating some novelty. Again, when you're ready to come out of this shape, coming slowly back to center. Notice if there are any other motions that your body is requesting or might need to feel balanced or complete in your practice. And when you've moved through all of those motions, whatever other poses or positions or stretches you might need, that's when we can come into our resting pose. And again, we've practiced keeping the body both alert and passive, and we've tried to maintain that deep awareness in the sakshi throughout practice today. And I mentioned the Yoga Sutras earlier, and I wanted to just bring out the verse or the sutra that I was speaking about. This is Yoga Sutra 2:17. It says, "The preventable cause of suffering is the apparent indivisibility of pure awareness and what it regards. What awareness regards, namely the phenomenal world, embodies the qualities of luminosity, activity, and inertia. It includes oneself, composed of both elements and the senses, and it is ground for both sensual experience and liberation." So then skipping down to 2:23, it says, "It is by the virtue of this apparent indivisibility of awareness and the phenomenal world that we begin to find that oneness or find that wholeness." So the idea is to be both alert in your awareness and fully engaged in your awareness, that witnessing, but also almost passive in the way we do things. We can even observe our sort of autopilot mode. We might even notice to myself, I'm in autopilot. that's still an awareness and an engagement with the moment, because the awareness or that witnessing consciousness is alert, even if the body or the thinking mind is not. So if you haven't settled into your stillness yet, go ahead and find your stillness. See if as your body becomes more and more relaxed, as you settle deeper into the moment or deeper into the floor, if you can find the body becoming soft and flowing with the experience, but the alertness of the mind. Simply watch the breath, watch the mind, watch sensation, watch perception. Staying alert and aware even when we're relaxed. Try to come into a place where you can observe, again, the supposedly outside world and the supposedly inner world, and see how the body starts to soften to a point where it becomes almost, you're aware of the illusion. As your body settles into the floor, start to feel oneness between your body and whatever's supporting underneath you. As you inhale and expand through the front body, start to feel the boundary of the body softening into that open space and broadness and vastness of the space around you. Start to feel the in the divisibility of the body, that sort of separateness kind of fading away. remaining alert and aware. Feel the places where the supposed boundary of your individuality has softened. Feel the back body and the floor or the earth supporting you, blurred together as one thing, one experience, sharing qualities. Feel the open space around you, also reflected in the front body, sharing qualities, that line between you and not you, blurred, softened, exposed. Feel also the joining of stillness and motion, as passive as we have become and as blurred into our environment as we have become. Start to feel the breath or the moment coming into the self and passing through the self. Again, feeling as it moves through you, as the movement of the moment and the movement of the breath passes through you. Feel how soft the boundary of your individual self is. At ease and relaxed, softened into your environment, finding that beginning sense of oneness with everything. We're going to start to bring a little bit more intention to our movement. So start to deepen the breath. So finding a little bit of intention and active participation in the moment flowing through you, in the breath flowing through you. Take in a little bit more of the moment and release a little more of the moment. Start to feel how this changes your stillness into a little bit more rise and fall in the heart and the belly and the ribs. Then allow that heightened sense of motion to come into the extremities of the body. Feel the place where your fingertips and toes have sort of blurred into the space around you. The heels and the backs of the hands and forearms have sunk into the earth. Start to see if you can find a little bit of movement in those areas while still maintaining that alertness, that awareness of oneness, of unity, of the dissolved boundary of the self. And then allow those motions in the body to come into the arms and the legs and maybe the head and the shoulders. And take whatever route you like to come from your resting shape with a little bit of movement into your upright seat again. Take your time to arrive. Sinking down into the moment and into the earth with the hips, and again finding that dissolving of the body into the solid space below you. Engaging that core center, the essence of our being, through the abdominal muscles, and sort of engaging that sakshi, that witnessing place. Start to open your heart and lift your head into that open space around you. Find that same sense of merging that we found on the floor. And the right and left hand come to press together at the palms. Again, another symbol of that unity, that seemingly separateness coming into wholeness and oneness. And then pull that into your heart. Let the chin drop to the chest to represent that ever watchful eye of the sakshi, or the witnessing consciousness. Always seeing and perceiving that oneness. Whenever we have started to feel a division, either within the self or between the self and some other, whether it's another person or another circumstance, we have lost our connection to the sakshi. And so start to come back into that wholeness. That's our signal to come back into observing the oneness. Look for some way of connection. And as we practice this, as we become better at it, as we practice enough to allow it to be our new normal, we become more of service to our own lives and the lives of all that are included in this oneness. And so we close our practice with this prayer of service. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. May all beings be happy, healthy, safe, and free. Namaste.